Welcome. I'm going to present my research trajectory here in Bath for 1 year. That is also a practice that I'm doing in a village in Castiglione with some researcher. The practice is called Evolutionary population, and we are going to discover. I would like to start with a very good news. It's a news that maybe not so many newspapers are going to tell you, but it's an amazing news, and it was reported in a newspaper, American newspaper, and was written in an article, scientific newspaper about environmental things. And this news says, Syrian seeds shake up Europe's plant patent regime. Salvatore Ceccarelli, that we are going to discover who is Salvatore Ceccarelli, knew he was engaging in a subversive act when in 2010 he took two 20-kilo sacks of durum wheat seeds from a seed bank outside of Aleppo and brought them to Italy. Now, 7 years later, those seeds from the Fertile Crescent, the birthplace of domesticated agriculture, with thousands of years of evolution behind them, are poised to challenge the system of plant patenting in Europe and elsewhere. Let's go to discover a bit. With Salvatore Ceccarelli. He's a genetist that was working for 25 years in Syria, and he was part of a center of agricultural research in dry areas called ICARDA. He was exploring something very interesting that was very fruitful in Syria. It was the so-called method of participative plant breeding. This system was really the idea to connect the scientific research with a common, one very special common that are their heritage of biodiversity. In a way, it was working to connect the enormous amount of variety of seeds from the bank seeds they had in that place with the peasant and the farmer, local farmer there. So it was working in this method that allowed to the farmer to choose the variety to grow and to select the crops they want to cultivate. In particular, it was working with the varieties of barley and wheat and other cereals. You know, these varieties, the Fertile Crescent, the Middle East is the first area of domesticated agriculture, where these seeds were domesticated as a first place, and in a way, it's all the other varieties comes from there, even the Roman Empire. What was interesting that it was working in places that are challenging a lot with the issue of climate change. In 2010, unfortunately, Ceccarelli had to leave, had to escape even from Syria, and he decided to don't live all this, the amazing work that he did with the local farmer for 25 years, he took 2 sacks of 20 kilo seeds. And he went in Italy. He went in Italy and started to work with the local farmer, particularly in 2 regions, in Tuscany and in Sicily. Everybody, he worked with 5-6 farmers, and everybody took like 5 kilos of this mix of seeds. Everyone took 5 kilos, but in these 5 kilos there were thousands of varieties of seeds. So it was an incredible amount of biodiversity that the farmers were cultivating in one spot, in one place. We are going to discover later what the experiment did. But there was like the place where Ceccarelli was, the Icarda was, it was like 20 kilometers from Aleppo, just to localize the place where the trajectory of these seeds. So there was like a huge problem when the people start to cultivate the so-called evolutionary population. The problem was that these seeds were completely illegal. Illegal not because they came from Syria, but they were illegal because in Europe we had like a rule that concerning the seeds, all the seeds that we are cultivating has to be homogeneous and uniform. This is really a main feature. And we are going to discover why we have this. So Ceccarelli decided to work to create kind of network in Italy called Rete Semirurali, Rural Seeds Network. And he started to lobby with other countries in Europe and with other NGOs that are working on environmental issues. And they pushed, in a way, the European Union to change the rules. It was probably also the people that were working in they were not conscious of the revolution they were doing at this moment, because it was the first time in Europe. There were many lobbies that were working before to change the rules relating to agriculture. It was the first time that this criteria of uniformity was in a way disrupted. And Ceccarelli at the time was saying, we are registering and certifying something that is evolving. Next year will be different. You start with one thing and you end up with another thing, totally different. Yes, it's a little bit radical. Yeah, it was. Let's do a parenthesis and understand why, until that moment, there was this law about uniformity. We can guess very easily. The lobby in the decision-making in Europe are very strong and important. The rules are created by the lobby. Until that moment, the lobby of monopolistic industry, they were really running and still are running. This is something really like something that like a hole in a system that is very consolidated. So this uniformity of the seeds was really a criteria that was put by the lobby in order to perpetrate this idea of controlling completely the market of food in Europe and elsewhere. So of course, what does mean uniform? We have to imagine a farmer, what the farmer is cultivating, the system that is cultivated is like that. One farmer has like some hectares of land, and go to the place where the consortium or cooperative where you can buy the seeds, and ask there to the people that sell what is convenient this year to plant. What you suggest in a way. Says, you know, this year we can give you corn because the corn is going to be in the market, will be very good. We can give you, it's better to plant this and this and this, and give to the farmer the set of the chemical set to plant wheat, no? At the end, if the farmer is lucky, at the end harvest these crops. And these crops, you cannot do anything except selling back to the person they sold you. Because you don't preserve any seeds, you do your work as farmer without passion, you are just blackmailed by the market system. With it, of course, you have to do chemical production, you have to use pesticides, you have to use everything. There is no other system. So you understand how much this hole in the rules, in the European rules, is important, no? Because this criteria that we were saying also this morning, this fascistic criteria, we can call like that, of homogeneity and uniformity, is really something that is very huge and big to change as a group. So let's come back to what does mean planting evolutionary populations. How it works. It's quite easy. It seems quite easy. You have your thousands of varieties of the same species. Let's say durum wheat. Okay. You plant in a spot. And of course, the soil, the earth, decide what to grow and what doesn't grow. Because, of course, this growing depends on the variety of the soil, of the feature of the soil, depends on the weather condition of the year, depends on the locality. Depends on many factors, but generally this evolutionary population grow in a different way relating the place and the climate conditions. So are flexible, and every year you have different plants. The farmer can decide to harvest everything and plant next year in the same spot, or start to select some of the good varieties. Say, you look at the field, you say this one, this one, this one, and you start to plant separately, and so you can have different experimental field of evolutionary population. In this way, after 2-3 years, you have your own variety. You have your own evolutionary population. Okay. So the variety that you have, it's never the same. And also in 100 meters, so you start with this huge biodiversity, and you arrive to have different biodiversity, of course, selected by the condition of the soil, and yeah, the condition also of the climate. So you have also another thing. You have completely the control of the seeds on your own. It means that you don't have to, you are completely detached by the system, monopolistic system. You became, you enter in a way in a network with other farmers that are cultivating this kind of evolutionary population, and you start to create your own, in a way, also flavor, because every place has different flavor. And what happened with the cultivation, that very, very soon the farmer has seen that also the production is very good. Also the production is very comparable with the production of the industrial agriculture, let's say. So there is a, so from this reason, from that moment on, many farmers are trying to cultivate the evolutionary population. Of course, it's not easy because it's a radical change. It's a big, it's very, it's completely another way to activate, in a way, the agriculture. Now, personally, I met together with my group, with my collective that I'm working in south of Italy, in a small village in south of Italy. I'm working on 5 years already to implement a model of living together otherwise, as Maria was saying today. We're working on a village that is almost abandoned. There's many villages in the area. Touristic, with an image, postcard image for the tourist people, but there is another side. There is the winter, there is the young people that are going, there are children, the schools that are closing. And when we met Ceccarelli 3 years ago, we didn't understand at the beginning, for real. We didn't understand all the cultural change that we were going to. Because, of course, Ceccarelli is interested in the agricultural development, no? With the idea really strong political idea about agriculture. But the implication of this this method are much more radical than we were thinking at the beginning. Because in a way, there is a choice that you do, agricultural choice, but there is a lot of implication in this culture, in this choice that you do. Let's come back at the idea how until now, nowadays, also the radical group are practicing the idea of biodiversity. You know, the last 50 years, there was the so-called Green Revolution. You know, the Green Revolution comes from military industry, actually comes from the war industry. Comes after the Second World War. Of course, you imagine the machine of production of the army was incredible. And they were producing mainly, and the important component in the industry was like the production of nitrogen and phosphorus salt. And so these chemical products were recycled inside the agriculture. And this was really the beginning of the, if you see also, it's very clear the date, the time. You see very clear the passage between the agriculture, the peasant agriculture and the industrial agriculture. So then the chemical agriculture now is very connected with the chemical industry is very connected through also, you know very well that Monsanto and Bayer became the same things and are providing this, in a way, all the kit that is necessary for the industrial farmers. The people that started to rethink the agriculture now, the so-called new farmers, are in a way going back in the past. Say, let's see what happened 50 years ago, for example. And let's try to recuperate the ancient crops that were cultivated 50 years ago. So everywhere in the world, luckily, the people started to look at the past and to cultivate the so-called ancient crops. And you know, also there was, of course, it was probably the only way to restart, looking back. But what, of course, the agriculture, the idea of variety in the history of humanity changed always. But what we are doing now we are reproducing also with these so-called ancient crops. We are reproducing the same system of the industrial agriculture, let's say, because we are looking for the perseveration of the species that we are cultivating. We are looking for example, in many places, the language that we are using to cultivate these ancient crops is very similar to the language that we are using in a way, in reactionary way in the society. For example, the term of autochthonous is very used, and it's not used well at all. It's, there are many places that are really, in a way, reappropriating of these crops and saying, this is the tomato of this locality, this is the wheat of this locality, and sometimes they are also creating kind of lobby around and trying to preserve and say this tomato has to be planted just here because this is the tomato of this place. No, this happens very often, and the language that is used is always this idea of perseveration of autochthon. So in the village where I'm working, we were exactly in this language. But of course there was like a really strange feeling of using these words for the creation of our biodiversity and our action, and the words that we were trying to use as political act in our... And in a way, we discover for the first time that probably we can find a language that is more universal, that is like something where the ethic, the practice of cultivation, and the language that is used can be more general. And this is exactly what we are looking for. And For this reason, here there is like a decalogue that Alexander Langer wrote in the 94. Probably this language you have read, probably this 10 or say 7 sentences of this manifesto. It's not updated anymore. But what is interesting for me is this idea of art of togetherness. And probably what I would like to research and understand if we can create a general art of togetherness where the language is common. So when we talk about reproduction of society, we have kind of same language that we can use. Alexander Langer. So, this that you see are, I made this photo, and you see how it is a evolutionary population. This is the durum wheat. These are the Syrian seeds that I was talking about, cultivated in Castiglione. And you see the diversity that is there. So, to recapitulate the features of this evolutionary population, what is revolutionary in a way? I feel that we can use, I can use this word. It's really working on the main issue relating to food in the global context. So that are, of course, the biodiversity, we say, the climate change with this idea of flexibility that I tried to explain, the hunger malnutrition through also the productivity and giving back to the farmer the control of their production and seeds. And also, for me, there is another thing that is very interesting, that in a way, we are, all the practice that we are doing, for example, in Castiglione, are really related to the last, it's like kind of reaction of the 50 year of the Green Revolution. But what is interesting with this, that we are not talking anymore about this. It's like we jumped completely these 50 years, and we are in a, it seems like we are in a new era when we talk about this. It's like incorporating all the process of globalization and going, in a new perspective. Yes. I would like to come back to switch and to imagine this dialogue between these two persons. That is, one is Salvatore Ceccarelli, another is Alexander Langer. In the 94, Langer was writing, the ever-growing migration, the mobility which modern life imposes inevitably trigger an higher level of interethnic and intercultural interaction in all corners of the world. For the first time in history, it is maybe possible to choose in full conscience to deal with and resolve in a peaceful manner this numerous movement of people, communities, population, even if their origin often is to be found in violence. But rhetoric and declared good are not sufficient. If one really wants to foster living together among diverse people on the same territory, one must develop an intricate art of togetherness. Alexander Langer you know, Alexander Langer was an Italian journalist, peace activist, politician. He's not very well-known figure, but he was very important for the capacity really to move in a moment where nobody was talking seriously about this issue. Was really fighting with this idea of art of togetherness. He was born in South Tyrol. You know very well the South Tyrol is a region in Italy where you have where they coexist three different ethnic groups. German, Italian, and Ladin. And Alexander Langer, from the beginning, he started really to be implicated in this process of thinking about interethnic coexistence. In South Tyrol, you have to do, still now, a declaration, an ethnic declaration to have access to the public function. Alexander Langer was one of the first person that decided to don't accept and to don't do the ethnic declaration. And for this reason, he didn't have the possibility to teach there in South Tyrol. Then he was like the founder of a green movement in Italy, the Green Party actually. It was also certain point he was elected in the European Parliament, and he was really one of the persons that was more implicated in all the conflict in the world. He was working in Palestine, he was working especially in ex-Yugoslavia. He was really implicated. He was really working for a peaceful solution and was at the time that was writing this manifesto. And it was actually 1 year before his death. And it was written, in a way, it was very utopistic in the way he was writing. He was really believing that it's possible and was working with all his energy. He was a really incredible, energetic person that was, but certain moment he decided to finish his life after, in '95, he committed suicide when he didn't see any solution for the conflict in ex-Yugoslavia. In particular, he was working in a village close to Mostar with a major of Mostar when he received a letter from this major where he declared that this non-violence no-violent politics has no possibility anymore to go. He decided, okay, this is the moment. I don't have any more energy to fight. What is for me? I would like really to imagine, in a way, now what evolutionary population can be also on the base of the thoughts of Langer and many others, and to understand how to reformulate this concept. So we say, I try to already to talk about this, how this idea of variety was in a way open for many, for millennia, before, in a way, the so-called Green Revolution. Also, this idea of mixing, in a way, you have to imagine the farmer as a creator of new variety. It's not the idea that you keep going with the same to keep going with the same attitude. What I would like to think in this year of research is also the language, as I said, that we use. For example, there's like a very weird correspondence between the political language that is used in probably in very fascistic way, and the language that we use in biology and in agriculture and for the production. For example, what we think is an alien species, what we think is an invasive species. In a way, also, this is the critics. Many people are moving toward also the practice of evolutionary population, that we introduce a lot of alien species, that we don't take care about the homogeneity of the species that we are cultivating, don't take care about the, in a way, the preservation of the autochthon and local species. So if you see, these words are synonymous that we are using to describe the species that we are cultivating. And it's really the language that we are using also to define the people that are, in a way, try to mix with other people nowadays, no? But the reality of the origin of the crops is this. We have practically 99 of the species that we are cultivating in the world are not native species. The globalized, this is a diagram that is very interesting because it shows how the origin of the food crops connect with countries worldwide. So it means that the crops that are native, for how the crops, for example, that are native in America are used in other countries. So the idea is very clear. We are already in a situation where it's quite impossible to talk anymore about invasive species, autochthon species. There are really, I don't think, for example, anyone know which one are the native species in Netherlands, for example, or in Italy anymore. People talk about there is this concept that is completely, and the language that we are using is completely fucked up. We are using really words. So, what I would like to imagine, also with the help, of course, of thinkers, people that are interesting to talk, philosophers, politics, how to imagine this language, and if it's possible to create a vocabulary. In parallel, of course, my practice, I would like really to practice this evolutionary population, and we are doing, for example, in the end of the month in Castiglione, in this village where we created the possibility to close the circle of qualitative cereals. We are in a way creating a a network of farmers that wants to enter in this process. In parallel, the idea is really to start to think also at the social level, what does mean evolutionary population in our community, in this community where we are working. In particular, in every village in the south of Italy, there is like a migrant center. And we tried to work on the model of Riace. Maybe you have known about, no? This little village in south of Italy where the mayor decided to reimagine the living together of the village, hosting and transforming the public money that were given for the refugee necessity, and to transform in possibility to evolve this collaboration together. So to create new work, a new possibility of togetherness. And it's incredible how the project is very successful. At the same time, for example, now in Italy there was like a news that the power, for example, even in this village are reacted, and they are trying to stop through bureaucratic reasons. So there will be a lot to do. It's not, but I think for me it's what is important is now for the next 10 months with this project is to open this dialogue, and I hope also now we can imagine. This in a way the question that in back was given, no? At the beginning, and this is also an answer that I'm trying to give to this preface of Foucault. I think now, if you like, if you want, what I propose is also I would like to start this discussion even on 10 minutes with you about what we intend, which kind of vocabulary we can implement. For example, one question that we in this context is also how we talk about competition, for example, related, and we can imagine also the social competition, the different species. This was something that is also very problematic, you know, because of course in the evolutionary population, the competition between, it's like the species that has more possibility grows and the other stay there. If so, how we imagine also to call or rename this idea of competition, or if we reimagine, we can reimagine a vocabulary for this, or for example the idea of of species and variety selection of species. If this is the general question that I'm posing to myself now, and I can open to you. Thanks. So any question? I know you come from, please.
Thank you, Luigi. This is a very, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
So, I think it's very interesting the way that you think this analogy between society and agriculture, that you're trying to set up and try to see if the vocabulary somehow can overlap and match. And then your last question about competition. So, when we think of this field of corn and all its genetic variety, and some variety works and some varieties don't, that entire process is predicated on having a farmer that somehow spreads the corn in the field. There's a certain environment that is conducive to the growth of this specific species. And so I think one of the questions that should be answered is like, how do we deal with that concept of the farmer in the level, you know, when we transfer that analogy back to society, right? So are we talking about a situation, for example, of basic income, where everybody has the same amount of nourishment, let's say, basic amount to grow as a human being, at which point we may be able to talk about competition between humans in a very different way, right? Yes, there would be competition, but nobody would necessarily, you know, die because of it, or like live in poverty because of it. And so this is, you know, this was a question that popped into my mind, how to think about this farmer figure that is necessary, at least for the agricultural part.
Yeah, and not only. Yeah.
It's more of a curiosity. How would you integrate the discourse about the third landscape, that's paesaggio? Because there are quite some similarities. Maybe there is no farmer, so there is no God watching over you. But I think that there are strong parallels.
Yeah. I think there are strong parallel also with the practice, the so-called practice of permaculture, for example, also. But I never found, to be honest, a discourse that was convincing me as the evolutionary population relating the biodiversity. In a way, for example, the permaculture, third landscape, Clergy, Clement, and so on, they give a kind of systematic solution that are really not moving in a way the agricultural system in a deep way. This is really also around permaculture. There is I know very well, for example, because we are trying to do in our project in south of Italy, but it's very hard to implement in large scale, for example, really to change the system of production. So they are very interesting tool in a way to rethink how to relate to the landscape, but I don't see practical tools that are changing, that could change really in very deep way the status quo in a way. So I think these tools can be combined as also the permaculture, because the permaculture in a way also is really this possibility with the different crops, varieties that grows together and are in a synergic way, no? And it's also very interesting. And the permaculture is a philosophy of living together. It's not just a philosophy of cultivation. Again, this is for maybe the first time that this reasoning is more circular and more, no? But the question of productivity and is not resolved. Yeah.
I'm curious because normally language evolves.
Yeah.
And you were talking about a revolution, which happens all over the world, in India.
Yeah, everywhere.
Completely transformed. And I wonder if the language evolved as well. I mean, if we would look at the evolution of the agricultural language, and if it evolved, and maybe there are certain elements to retrieve from the past language that can sort of link back. And I'm very curious to understand if this industrialization that was in the distance in terms of industrializing agriculture, if that also
I think there is like a gap between the when I think between the agricultural practice and the philosophical practice that we do. Generally, I've seen also in my past, I'm an engineer, I've seen how much, for example, the technical part is completely disconnected to the, for example, philosophical part of reasoning. And when you put together the different, for example, way of reasoning, you can have really incredible incredible success in resolving some problem, even linguistic problem. In this case, I think the linguistic problems are very, very important. Mainly, because of course, if you think this method of evolutionary population is quite very simple in a way, no? But it was really something more cultural and philosophical that why we didn't do before, no? It's quite easy, no? We put together and we live there. It's quite a simple, but why we didn't do before? Why it's not used? Even if the productivity is good, you don't need to fertilize. You have the flexibility for the climate change. You have better food in qualitative food. Why we didn't use before? It's really the question of language, political language, and social. It's a social meaning in a way. It's not, and this articulation for me it's very interesting to explore and to imagine through a practice. For example, also we have seen. It's much more easy when we see with our people in our village, when we show the evolutionary population in place and we show that it's very successful, we can really use the metaphor and the possibility to explain why, for example, the migration how many stereotypes we have about the migration, for example. Now, this is it's incredible how the people change through the example and start to understand. Yes, why we call the ancient crop we use all these weird words to know. For example, that are not ancient. Also, the ancient crop that we define are not ancient at all. All the names that we are using, during the use, we know that the language has already passed away, that are not functioning anymore to define what we want to define.
Thanks a lot, Lou. I was just wondering, I missed a little bit the political economy language. You were talking about languages in your talk, because I can imagine that one of the reasons the industrial system that we talked about is so effective is because it has a whole set of vested interests which are behind it, and which are behind that mode, not only production but also distribution. So I just wondered if that language was some way out of this language of the idea of the alloptone and the autochtone, the idea of originary seeds, ancient seeds and things like that, whether a sort of analysis of the exploitation of the farmers, the way in which there's a surplus value that is created, because I'm going in a particular direction with that language which maybe has a history in the south of Italy as well because of the Communist Party.
Absolutely.
I just wondered whether that was a useful way of getting out of some of these, or adding at least a mix.
Absolutely, it is another level that I was saying probably a little bit in the beginning in my explanation when I say I was the change that the evolution population brings. But also, for example, it's interesting because we are separating the practice of production and reproduction, and it's interesting that we cannot separate if we want. For the economic language that we have to implement, we cannot separate the two things. For example, what I like in this also in this possibility that the evolution population they have this incredible capacity to be reproductive in a way, and at the same time to be productive, no? Also, not also in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality, no? Yeah, there is a discourse really, at least just the beginning. For me, it's like I think that I would like also to involve, for example, Ceccarelli, the genetist that created this method, in a way, invented this method, because when I started to talk about this incredible possibility to change the language, saying I never thought really at this capacity. No, I would like, for example, to interfere in a way could be really interesting for me to think about the language, because we are not used to do. We are just going on with the language that we have. Evolutionary population is, for me, is an amazing word, no, to imagine, but also this came through the agricultural practice. It wasn't just because it's flexible, it's evolutionary in itself, this practice, no? But has a lot of meaning to, no?
An aspect of it that I was mentioning was the historical side and the difference, like in making this analogy between this biodiversity in this situation and then a general form of diversity in society. The society diversity is not brought into big bags and ducks in the country, and you know, the population evolves through a historical dimension, and a huge part of that obviously is colonization and the violence that comes with that.
Exactly.
So my question would be, in making this analogy, so on the one hand you want to deal with diversity in a positive way by affirming difference, so on the other hand you want to acknowledge why that diversity exists in the first place, which aligns with that colonial history and so on. That second side to me is missing from the seasonality. And my question would be, how can that historical dimension of society be accounted for by looking at this agricultural model?
Yeah. Sorry? Yeah. Yeah, these are reflections really. I don't have an answer, of course. It's and I don't think we have to resolve through this practice all the problem of the history of for example, the idea of colonization is. I don't know how can be really interfere or in dialogue with this practice. But what is interesting in a way that, for example, the provenance of these seeds from the regional seeds. In a way, it's interesting that cycling is going back in the first, in a way, domestication of the seed. It's like going back, and now there is like this passage, because of course, for example, if we think the wheat, for example, that is, or the cereals in general, they came from this area, of the world, to the Roman. They were domesticated, they were evolving in Europe, and then came back, and there was this passage. For example, to create this circularity of the history is very interesting. And then, of course, you need also in the composition of the evolutionary population, you have really to think well how to compose the first nucleus of biodiversity. For example, also taking care of to see all the passages of the history, how the biodiversity was evolving. The first act is very important.
So how are you going to let history not repeat itself?
Yeah, there is
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. It's not very connected with the two things. I don't see it now, but maybe yes, in the reflection during the year or during can be also some connection with. But I don't think it's more for me. I think it's very connected with the concept how we reimagine the concept of globalization. I think this is very important to reimagine because also for this idea that we have of invasive species or alien species, no, that are there. We are our food, and we are made by alien species. If we talk like that, no. And this process of globalization, we cannot come back. Who wants to come back at the original and native species and eat just I don't know even what is the what is the native species. Nobody knows anymore. So I think the reflection is more that. Yeah. And the idea is really to build a language. My idea is to arrive to do a work. I'm thinking how to do a film that is really addressed not only to the art world. I would like really to talk also with to present this possibility of evolution population in terms of language, in terms of practice, to a broader public, like really because I'm belonging there, of course, but this occasion in back 10 months of possibility also to invite philosophers, thinkers, economists, or people to think together is something really interesting to me, no? To develop and to think. But it's just the beginning, it's just like flow of possibility that I put, or potentiality that I put here on the table now. Yes.
I want to mention one because I was kind of ignorant about agriculture before. So nowadays the seed companies sometimes use kind of monopoly of seeds.
Yeah.
So basically they sell the seeds to the farmers, but the farmers they grow the crops, but when they get the seeds, those seeds are infertile. So they can't reproduce themselves, so they have to buy seeds from the companies again.
Yeah,
so somehow this kind of like capping of the reproduction chain of the plants themselves somehow just like make this evolution population impossible. So somehow how can we break that? This kind of monopoly and also this capitalist system that we need this kind of monopoly in order to continue.
I understood your question. I think also these things about seeds that are infertile from monopoly, this kind of industrial agriculture, it's not really true. The problem is not, there are some seeds that are not reproducing, but the problem that I was explaining before, it's not convenient for the farmer to reproduce the seeds. It's not convenient for economic reasons. Because when you, it's the market that decides for you. As I said, you go to buy your seeds as farmer, and generally you don't buy because you want to cultivate or because your territory needs this. But you are the people that propose you which seeds is good to cultivate that year. And the next year will be different because the market is going, the price of the crops is going differently, and they propose different solutions. This one cuts completely the system of monopolistic system because it means that you are generating completely your own biodiversity, and you have the system of reproduction. You can do, there are now also experiments with tomato, not only, I was talking about wheat, that is the most advanced evolution population, but you can do with many things. The idea is really to put together, for example, tomato, we have thousands of varieties of tomatoes. We are cultivating 20 or 30 in the world, but with this method, you can have even much more variety. You can create your own varieties that are more close with the climate, with the system that you have, with the climate change, with your feature of your soil. So you can really implement your own biodiversity and cut completely the monopolistic system. And the other things, the evolutionary population, by definition, they don't need any chemical effect.
I'm also ignorant of agriculture. So, do the people who supply the seed for them, do they guarantee to buy the product at the end?
Now it's very new practice, and now what is happening? Generally, the people, the farmer, are starting with really receiving 5 kilos, for example, or 10 kilos from a farmer that is cultivating, or you can go, for example, there is in Italy and
so,
everyone.
In the old system,
yeah,
they guaranteed to. They said in the old system, industrial system, they would guarantee to buy whatever you succeed in growing. They would say grow this week, and we promise to. Is that true, or
it's promised? You have more chance. You have more chance for to sell your products if you cultivate that product in a way. It works like that. You have more chance, but of course,
absolute guarantee.
No, you don't have any guarantee. But it's like a kind of contract that you deal with the person. You say, okay, and you know you have a person that is going to buy at the end of when you harvest your crops. Yeah.
And then with the evolutionary system, who's buying?
Who is buying? It's made for the local market. Of course, you can you can enter also in a more globalized system to sell your things somewhere else. The idea is really, for example, in our place, we are implementing a system where we are creating like a network of farmers, and we are doing the meal also. We did a crowdfunding to have like community meal, and in order really to be autonomous from the other system and have everything from the beginning to the end, to be autonomous.